Miss Joanne loved her some Kens. And she was like, Kens, how you like my sweatshirt? The paws are real soft. Won't you feel them? I looked at her like, it just kind of threw me off. She was like, won't you feel them? Mind you, at this point, I've probably been locked up maybe about a year at that point. Yo, once again, it's on. Back at you one more again. Real Kens TV in the house like kitchen sinks. Hopefully you like the video. Feel free to comment. Definitely share. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. And be sure to hit that post notification. So anytime I bring you this action and this heat, guess what? You're amongst the first to receive. Now, with no further ado, let's get into this morning's video, if you will. Friday morning, 9:40 a.m. And I was just reflecting back. You ever just take a moment to just reflect back? You know, I did a live earlier this week, and one of the questions that someone asked me was, Kens, do inmates really become involved with female staff while incarcerated? And it was a blatant yes. Definitely happens. It definitely goes down. Now, some may ask, well, why would a female staff member, whether she's a correction officer, whether she works in administration, whether she works in the commissary, the child hall, at any point or any position, rather, in the facility, why would she become engaged, engulfed, involved, to say the least, with an actual inmate? The thing about it is this. People look at it and they say, okay, an inmate. An inmate is just a name. You know, inmates are still regular people. You do know that, right? Like, inmates are regular people like everybody else. They're just titled inmate. You got to understand that when you're incarcerated, you got dudes that's working out 3 times a day, 6 days a week. You know, they work out in the morning, come back in the afternoon and work out, and then come back in the evening and work out. So, oftentimes, the dudes that are locked up, they don't look like the dudes that's out here on the streets. Because out here on the streets, you got guys that's, you dealing with everyday life. You dealing with, you know, dudes drinking, dudes drugging, you know, smoking all day. You see what I'm saying? Eating unhealthy, running the streets, not getting enough rest or what have you. That's why oftentimes when a person first gets released, they say he has that glow about himself. Pause. I don't say that. That's what other people say. But they'll say an individual that just got released, you can tell that he probably just got released because, you know, he's in shape. He has that glow about himself. So it's just like, okay, yeah, this guy, he definitely been locked up. So just imagine women see that. No, you're not supposed to be involved. It's highly illegal. It's highly frowned upon. But at the same time, you still have eyes. Situation I had one time. I was at a facility. And I don't want to name the facility because I don't know if this individual still works there. I may have to put in a call. But nevertheless, I was at a facility in Kentucky. They have what's called Class D facilities. Now, what a Class D, like if I was editing right now, you would look in the screen, like the top right-hand corner probably, and it would say Class D facility, and it would have like a picture of the actual facility. But I'm not editing at this point, so you'll just have to use your imagination, respectfully. So they have a Class D facility, and basically what that means is when they send you off to the Department of Corrections, instead of sending you to prison, you're subject to be sent to a Class D facility. Now, the Class D facility is nothing more than a county jail. Period. It's a county jail. Now, different Class D facilities are operated differently, and they look different. Now, this particular Class D facility, it was about maybe 80 inmates. It was a dorm. It was one dorm, kind of like an army barracks, you know. You had the double racks, top and bottom or whatever, and you had rows. You had like 8 different rows, and each row had 10 people, per row or whatever. So you're in this facility, you get to go out and work. Excuse me. You get to go out and work into the community, and you don't make real money, anything like that. Matter of fact, we were making like $24, $25 a month, but it gets you out of the dorm. You get to go out into the community, whether it's picking up trash, cans, roadside, cutting grass, weed eating, working in the courthouse. It's jobs like that. So everybody is required to work at this facility. And my particular job was, I worked inside of the facility. I went out a couple of days, and they had us doing some manual labor, and I just wasn't feeling that. So I said, hey, y'all got any other jobs? They was like, yeah, we have a job in the laundry that's available. I was like, cool. It was like, well, you don't get to go outside. I was like, cool, I don't care about going outside. It was a small town, probably about an hour and a half away from where I'm from, so I didn't know anyone in that town anyway. So they put me in the laundry room. I'm working in the laundry room. And there was a lady that she was kind of over the facility. Now, she didn't actually have the position, the name position of being the coordinator over the facility, but she was over the facility, if that makes any sense to you. She was always there. She knew everything. She had been there for years. Miss Joanne. Miss Joanne loved her some Kens. I don't understand why, but she loved her some Kens. So, I would be in the laundry room or whatever. She'd come back there and talk to me. Now, mind you, a lot of the times when I'm at work, there's maybe 5 or 6 inmates there. Everybody else is out to work. But, they had a couple other inside positions or whatever. So, I'm working in the laundry room one day, and Miss Joanne comes back there, and she's, we're talking or whatever. And I never will forget, she had a University of Kentucky Wildcats sweatshirt on. And it had like the paws on like each side of the shirt. It had like the Kentucky Wildcat paws on there. And she came back there and we were talking or whatever. And she was like, Kens, how you like my sweatshirt? I was like, yeah, it's nice, Miss Joanne. And she did like this. I never will forget. She did her herself like this, and then she started shaking like that. And she was like, yeah, the paws are real soft. Won't you feel them? I looked at her like, it just kind of threw me off. She was like, won't you feel them? Mind you, at this point, I've probably been locked up maybe about a year at that point. So, I've been locked up, man. So, fellas, you know what it is when you've been locked up, for a year. And if you don't, I'm quite sure that you can imagine. So, I'm like, in my mind, like, is this a trick? Is Miss Joanne trying to get real Kens in trouble? So, even though in my mind, I wanted to, fill on the paws, man. Because, they did look like they were kind of soft, to say the least. But I was like, nah, Miss Joanne, I better not. So she started laughing or whatever. So from that day on, her and I became really, really cool. But it was, she would say little stuff to me or what have you. But I never took it there. I never really wanted to take it there. One day, I'm laying in my rack. My rack is my bed or whatever. Now, at this facility, you can have your own TV, your own headphones, your own clothes. You can have your own money. You can play poker. They didn't care. Like I said, it was a small town jail. Really, it was cool, to be honest. They were real, real cool. People had cell phones. No, we weren't supposed to have phones. They knew we had them, but it was just like, okay, just keep them out of our face. You can't just be, laying around on your phone. But they knew that cell phones were present. So I'm laying in my rack one day, and she pages me over the loudspeaker. Like, man, what's this about? Mind you, this jail looked nothing like a jail. It looked like a, I don't know, maybe like It was a former senior citizen building, actually. So everything, the toilets were porcelain. Everything was drywall. They had the drop ceilings. It was a regular building. It wasn't even a jail. So they paged me up to the front. I go up to the front, and she's like, Kens, I need to talk to you. So I'm like, yeah, what's going on, Miss Joanne? She was like, could you help me out? And I was like, sure. I mean, what do you need? She was like, what would you charge me to borrow $100 until next Friday? Now, I know some of you's like, borrow $100 till next Friday? You're an inmate, or you were an inmate. How did you have $100? As I mentioned, at this facility, you could have your own, you could have money, and there wasn't a limit. I used to walk around with at least $600-700 on me at all times. Why did I need $600-700 on me at all times? Because I was the bank. They used to call me Chase Bank. So when guys would come in and their money hadn't hit yet or whatever, hey Kens, I need 10. Okay, 10, give me 14 back. Hey Kens, I need 20, give me 28 back. So that's how I was able to accumulate a lot of money and send money home. My daughter, at the time, just my daughter or whatever, and birthdays, Christmas, and keep money in my pocket. And I didn't have to burden anybody by calling home and asking them to send me money while I was incarcerated. I was making my own money. I was doing a couple other things too, but that, that was my main money maker. So she was like, yeah, I need to borrow $100 until, I had something come up. And I said, Miss Joanne, you don't have to explain the situation to me. I said, I tell you what, Miss Joanne, this is what I do. I give you the $100. She was like, well, what I got to do for you, Kens? I said, no, it's nothing like that. I said, well, it is, but just let me explain. Every week, my girl used to come up and visit me. The girl that I was with, the young lady that I was with at that time, she used to come and visit me. Well, they had cut out the contact visits. Initially, they were contact visits. Best visits in the world. And the reason I say the best visits in the world, they would literally just allow you and your visit to sit in a room. There's other visitors in there as well. And there's no cameras, there's no COs, there's nothing. You just sit in there, talk, basically do whatever. I know it seems wild, but this is the honest truth. This is not a Dante Show Network story. It's a real Ken story. Sorry, I just had to throw that in. So, they had cut out the visits because it was too much going on as far as the things being brought in or what have you. So now you had to visit your people through a glass. There's a phone, you pick it up, you talk through the glass like on TV, and it really, really sucked. It sucked because the visitation room was very small. And then when you go from contact visits to through the glass, it's just like, oh my God. And the visits were only like 30 minutes long. So I said, Miss Joanne, you give me a conjugal visit? You allow me to have conjugal visits, every once in a while, whatever. You ain't even got to worry about giving me that $100 back. She was like, oh, Kens, I don't know if I can do that. I was like, I understand. She was like, I tell you what, I'm going to call you back up here later on, and I'm going to figure out how I can do it, and we'll take it from there. I'm like, cool. Later on, she calls me back up there. She tells me how it's going to go down. She's like, listen, your visit comes tomorrow. I'm going to tell her to come at this particular time. I'm going to make sure that you're like the last visit. Visits would end at, I want to say 5 o'clock. So she told my visitor to come at like 4:15, something like that. It's been a while, so I can't remember the exact time, but it's all relatively close. So I was like, okay, cool. She was like, when your visit comes in, I'm going to go ahead and have her in the room. And then once you come up to visitation, just slide you in, open the door, you can just go in the room. Nobody ever see. I'm like, cool. I give her the money. Works out exactly like she said. I walk in the room, voila, my girl's standing right there. It's crazy because she became my girl while I was incarcerated. Her and I, we had messed around on the streets or whatever, but I hadn't talked to her maybe in a few years. But again, I had a cell phone. So being that I had a cell phone, I was able to get in touch with her, and we kind of, rekindled or whatever. And she told me that she always liked me, and, she always wanted to be with me or whatever. So that's how, she started to come and see me while I was incarcerated. So she's in the room. Like I said, it had been a year for me, but it had been a few years since her and I had linked up. So, we in the room, and, you can use your imagination. This is YouTube, this is not Pornhub. This is YouTube. So you can use your imagination, and, all was well, whatever. So afterwards, Miss Joanne, she calls me back up to the front. She was like, "You enjoy yourself?" Yeah, I did enjoy myself. I appreciate that, Miss Joanne. So it goes on to happen maybe 3 or 4 more times. It wasn't like an every week thing. It was just one of those things to where, I didn't want to push the envelope. I didn't want to take advantage of the situation. Next thing I know, Miss Joanne comes in the laundry room one day. Once again, while I'm working, she's talking to me. She's saying little things or whatever, but the little things became larger. What do you call it? Turning a molehill into a mountain. Initially, the statements were, little molehill statements, but at some point it became a mountain. And, she was telling me that, she's interested in me, and she was always feeling me, and, she really, really liked me or whatever, and she knew that I had a woman, but it didn't matter to her or whatever. And I'm like, "Miss Joanne, I understand, but I can't get you in any sort of trouble. This is your job, it's your career. You've been here for the longest." And she was like, "You allow me to she talk real country. "You let me handle that, Kens. I got this." Next thing you know, me and Miss Joanne's, we're messing around. So me and Miss Joanne, we're messing around, and at the same time, she's still giving me conjugal visits. Now, it was a beautiful thing because Miss Joanne, man, she would bring me like home cooked food from home. She would slide it into me. Now, at this facility, it really wasn't anything that was uncommon because they were so cool to where your people could just bring you food. So if you wanted, let me get some, KFC or whatever. Your people could bring you KFC, pizza, whatever. So when she would bring the food in to me, she would just act as though someone dropped it off. So no one ever knew. Never asked her to bring me anything, contraband, no drugs, no alcohol, none of that type stuff or whatever. But Miss Joanne, she kind of, I pretty much did what I wanted to do in that facility. And the whole thing lasted for a while. Next thing I know, they called me to the front again over the loudspeaker. It's kind of like internal affairs, even though it wasn't internal affairs. But in prison, you have internal affairs. So they're questioning me about Miss Joanne or whatever. Somebody done said something. Now, it's crazy because I never said anything to anybody. I never said one word to anybody. Quite sure Miss Joanne didn't say anything. But at the same time, who said something? They were on to us. They're asking me about Miss Joanne and has she ever, done any special favors for me, or has she ever made advances towards me, or, trying to get me to incriminate myself along with Miss Joanne. I don't know what you all are talking about. Miss Joanne, she's professional. She's nice to me, but she's nice to everybody. But outside of, work related, our conversations or what have you, I don't know anything. I knew they had no cameras because in the laundry room there were no cameras. Up front in the room to where I did my my due diligence as far as the conjugal visits, to say the least, they had no cameras. So I knew that we weren't on camera anywhere. I knew I hadn't said a word to anybody. So either Miss Joanne had been bragging on old Kens, you know what I mean? Either Miss Joanne had been bragging on old Kens to perhaps one of her co-workers, or the inmates kind of pick up on things. Hated on me. Not sure what the scenario was. All I knew was they were questioning me, and I don't know what you all are talking about. Lo and behold, they packed me up, throw me in the hole. I'm not in any trouble. It's like when the police arrest you or detains you. You're not in any trouble. You're not being arrested, but you're sitting on the curb with handcuffs on. Okay, so I'm not arrested, but I'm being detained for my safety. So they throw me in the hole, pending investigation. About a week later, They come, they let me out. I just know I'm about to get transferred. See, when you get caught up messing with a staff member, that's an automatic write-up. It's a major write-up that typically comes with hold time. In Kentucky, they call it pursuing a relationship. That's what they call it, pursuing. Parole board sees that. Oh, man, this guy's still, acting a fool while he's locked up. He hasn't learned. Here, give him, an extra 15 months, 18 months. That's typically what happens. They come, they let me out of the hole. They send me back to the dorm. As though nothing happened. Got my laundry job back. Nothing was ever said about it. They did transfer Miss Joanne to the other side. Now, when I say the other side, they didn't fire her, but they transferred her to the other side. The other side is the county side. That's where the county inmates were being housed. I was on the state side. That's where the state inmates were being housed. Now, the difference between a state inmate and a county inmates have misdemeanors or they have pending felonies, which means they're still going back and forth to court, fighting their felonies, or they've already been sentenced and they're doing their time, which is less than a year, 12 months or less. On the state side, you've already been sentenced. You've already gone. You're actually in the Department of Corrections. So that's the difference between the two sides. They moved Miss Joanne to the county side, so I was unable to see her at that point. I would still talk to her from time to time because I did have my phone, but it was never the same. She didn't have the same energy. It seems as though she felt as if I said something. I was like, Miss Joanne, I've never said anything to anyone. Led me to believe that she didn't say anything. Actually, she said that she didn't say anything. So it must have been one of them old hating inmates that kind of put two and two together or whatever. But it wasn't so easy to put two and two together because we didn't make it obvious whatsoever. But at any rate, Miss Joanne and I, we would talk from time to time, but it was never the same. I would see her every once in a while. She would slide over, to the state side or whatever. But she was never allowed to work on the state side at that point. It was just she may come and drop something off or pick something up or something like that because the county side was like across the street. And that's how that situation kind of just resolved. Luckily, Miss Joanne was able to keep her job. Luckily, I didn't catch a write-up behind it. And everything just kind of just smoothly, slowly just dissipated, went away. Typically, things don't end like that. All types of relationships occur between inmates and staff. Typically it's a correction officer along with the inmate. The inmate tells somebody instead of just keeping it to itself, like I did. See, there's an old saying, loose lips break relationships. And a lot of times, dudes, they can't hold hot water. So you can imagine what they're doing and saying in their interrogation room, right? So they'll tell their buddies on the yard or whatever, and then they'll tell somebody, then they'll tell somebody. Then the next thing you know, you see the officer getting walked off the yard. Walked off the yard. When you see an officer getting walked off the yard, they're being escorted, they're being fired. Like, it's your regular job. When you're being terminated or whatever, they walk you out of the building. That's how they do in prisons. Because, see, typically an inmate, he's going to push that envelope. Now, when I say push that envelope, meaning she gives you an opportunity. She's being there for you, somebody for you to talk to, somebody that's going to listen to you. Then she gets to helping you out financially, putting money on your books and, things like that. But then you want her to bring you in cigarettes. You want her to bring you in weed. You want her to bring you in, this, that. Meet up with her people out on, or your people out on the street and bring you in all type of stuff that you're not supposed to have. And she gets caught up. Next thing you know, she's in jail trying to help you out. So I would say it's not a good idea to mess with inmates. You happen to be working in a facility, female staff, it's probably best to stay away from inmates. Because they're going to ask you to bring that bag in. 9 times out of 10, unless you run across somebody that's just genuine like I was and didn't want or need anything, and that's rare, from you. And actually, let me take that back. Because I can't say that I didn't need anything because, she would bring me in food and I needed that food. Yeah, I did need that food. But besides food, I never asked Miss Joanne to bring me in anything. And heck, I think she volunteered to do that. But nevertheless, these are the things that typically happen in prison. You find yourself a staff member. I understand that inmates are smooth talk. You understand that you may have some things going on at home that, is difficult, or your relationship may not be working out. But understand that messing with an inmate only leads to one thing, one or two things: being walked off that yard, or actually being incarcerated along with the inmate. Hopefully you like the story. Feel free to comment, definitely share, subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed, and be sure to hit that post notification. So anytime I bring you this action and this heat, guess what? You're amongst the first to receive. Real Kens TV.